Hey, beautiful humans. You're here to think out loud with me. I am Natalie Peterson, casting in from my little neck of the woods in northern Colorado to you in yours, wherever and whenever that might be. This little digital adventure is my solution of turning years of internal chatter, wondering, silent suffering, and physical and mental close calls into enlightening and empowering conversations with others. Since COVID-19 turned our lives upside down in early 2020, the mental landscape of our personal and professional circles has shifted in profound and lasting ways. It's so easy to go back there for me. At first, it felt like a sudden plunge into uncertainty and isolation, navigating a world where routines dissolved literally overnight. And then the initial shock gave way to a new normal that reshaped how we think, feel, and interact with the world, particularly in terms of work-life balance. For me, the most significant long-term effect has been the redefinition of this work-life balance. With offices closing and homes transforming into workplaces and school, the boundary between professional and personal life became increasingly blurred. This shift forced many of us to reconsider how we allocate time and energy. The old 9 to 5, it gave way to a more flexible, albeit sometimes overwhelming schedule where work and home life often collided. For many of us, this new arrangement brought a sense of freedom and autonomy. The elimination of commutes and the ability to work remotely allowed for more time with family and personal pursuits. However, it also introduced challenges such as the difficulty of switching off and the constant presence of work responsibilities. Burnout became a common issue as we struggled to maintain boundaries and find a sustainable rhythm. The long-term mental shifts have also led to a greater emphasis on well-being. Companies began to recognize the importance of mental health, offering resources and support for employees to manage stress and anxiety. We have a massive way to go, but there's a growing understanding that a healthy work-life balance isn't just beneficial, but essential for productivity and overall happiness. For many, this has meant advocating for flexible schedules and understanding that caring for our mental health isn't selfish. It directly impacts, though, our professional and personal lives. Life shifted considerably after COVID. It was a wake-up call, a moment of impact, a shared aha that spanned the entire globe and that has led to a much-needed emphasis on mental health. The pandemic challenged us to rethink our priorities and redefine what balance means in our lives, hopefully leading us to a more mindful and resilient approach to life and work. Long before COVID, life shifted for my guest today in such a way that she would never be the same. And since, she has made it her life's work to partner with people and companies around processes and possibilities of performance. Not just your typical clock in and clock out, do your job and do it well performance, but an entirely different level of momentum and satisfaction. Wendy Cocke is the founder of Engineering Leadership Solutions, LLC, where she provides management coaching and leadership development. Wendy's a chemical engineer by training and spent over 20 years leading technical teams in Fortune 500 companies prior to joining the faculty at Georgia Tech. During that time, she led large international projects and coordinated resources across time zones, borders, and languages. After moving into leadership roles, she managed teams spanning R&D, manufacturing, and supply chain, focused on increasing sales, improving quality, enhancing design, and reducing cost. She has been integral to the launch of 2 major medical devices and provided support during numerous supply chain interruptions to reduce customer impact. About 10 years into her career, when her oldest child was still an infant, Wendy pursued a flexible work arrangement that would allow her to balance all aspects of her life. She was told that though the company supported her desire to pull back, her career would stall, and she would never move up in the organization. Little did they know that the change to her work schedule would be the catalyst that would propel her career. As a working mother, Wendy has redefined success for herself according to her values, balancing work and life so that she can drive results while still spending the quality time needed to raise her children and support her extended family. Wendy believes that with her experience and her engineering mindset, she can help people find their place at work and thrive once they get there. She lives in Metro Atlanta with her extended family, lovingly referred to as her rolling circus, which includes her husband, 2 kids, mother and grandmother, and I think even some fur babies. Wendy's the author of several books, including Making Flex Work, Reimagine Your Work, and her newest release, When Work Works, which is a collaboration with 14 others who like to think about work differently. Today's work involves thinking out loud with me. Wendy, thank you for joining me. Welcome to my space.
I am so excited to be here. And as you were going through, your reflection of COVID and burnout and boundaries, it made me think about the fact that COVID brought to the forefront what people had been dealing with for the entirety of their life of work. And all of a sudden, we had the language to talk about it because we weren't doing it in the shadows anymore. Everyone had it, and everyone was having to be out loud together, going through this. So, COVID was pivotal for the way we think and talk about flexible work, and yet it didn't actually change the need. It just brought it out of the shadows.
Yeah. Yeah. In such a way, holy shit, such a way that it needed to be. Yeah. It made it okay to think about. I mentioned that you were on this mission of expanding what it means to be in a flexible work environment long before COVID even hit. Did you, so you were having conversations with companies around a topic that was like nice to have, right?
Yeah, it was a problem, right? It was your one-offs. So if you think about in a pre-COVID world, you had some moms who felt burnout, so you would give them accommodations. Right? That's what flexible work was before COVID. I had my COVID meltdown moment that many people went through during the first 12 months of the pandemic. I had it a decade earlier.
Wow.
I, as a new mom, had this feeling that I was failing at everything. I felt like I was not able to be there for my child the way I thought I was supposed to be based on everything I had seen in the world of what mothering looked like. I felt like I was failing as an employee because I had a decade worth of experience working as an engineer, knowing what good looked like and unable to deliver that.
Mm.
And then my husband, my partner, he was getting what was left at the end of the day. So I wasn't succeeding in that front either. And my friends, they're super gracious, but they'll tell you I sucked at that too, right?
Mm.
They got nothing. So there was nothing left by the time I got to them. I went through that because of my family transition in a way that so many people went through it in COVID.
Mm-hmm.
What you know and what I know is that once people have that moment and they're able to see a new reality, you can never unsee it.
Yep.
So for me, having worked with people and organizations for the decade prior to the pandemic was simply because I knew things that people didn't yet know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because I knew what it felt like to feel that burnout, to feel that failure, and to know there had to be a way.
Mm-hmm.
There
Mm-hmm.
had to be another way to do this.
Yeah.
Because I didn't want to give up any of those pieces of my life.
Right.
One of my mottos around our house is life is about choices, and I choose them all. And that's because I don't like to say no. I have FOMO. My daughter she tells you that she can feel her FOMO in her belly, that fear of missing out. She can feel it. And I don't want to miss out on anything. So there has to be a way to piece it all together. So I didn't have to give it up.
Mm-hmm. Man, I relate to I've been having conversations around, here's what I know about you already. We do a lot of things really well. And so when and yet not as well as we want to do them because we are so spread, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we end up with all of these responsibilities, and we say yes to absolutely I can help because I know I can. I know I can help, right? So I'm not saying there's there is very much a there's this desire, there is FOMO, absolutely, and there is this genuine desire to help things move in a good direction because we are results driven individuals, right? And yes, absolutely, I'm on board. Let's go, let's go. Then, fast forward and we're looking back and we're looking down. I like to say, I look down and I'm holding every key to every door, to every lockbox, to every security, to every password, and I'm like, how the hell did I get all of this? I'm not doing any of it right, or not right, but I'm not doing any of it effectively. There's got to be a breaking point, right? And to have the awareness, without a global pandemic, to be like, uncle, like,
Yeah.
shit,
This is
somebody,
not working.
this is
Yeah.
not working. I'm gonna fall out. I'm gonna freaking die here, right?
And it's a type A personality problem, right? So I am really good at a lot of things and I have a really high level of expectation. So what made me crash was the fact not that anybody else in my life would have said I was doing it poorly. They would have probably given me a B plus. As a matter of fact, as I was writing my first book, I went and asked, and they all sort of gave me, yeah, no, I never saw you fail at anything. So it wasn't that I was letting other people down. It was that I was letting myself down. I wasn't living up to the standards I wanted. So as you talk about, we say yes to a variety of things because we can help, but are we helping to the level that's good enough, or are we helping to the level we want to be helping
Yep.
to? Are
Yeah.
we engaged in delivering at our best or at good enough?
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes good enough is fine, but sometimes good enough is not good enough for you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so for me, going part-time in a career that just didn't do part-time, I mean, people in my life that cared about me the most professionally. So take my family out. My family was all on board with part-time because they understood what I needed.
Yeah.
But when you think about those people in your professional world, the ones who metaphorically wrap their arms around you and make sure that your career is taken care of, they said things to me like, why would you throw it all away? They said, why would you give up? You can figure this out. You're really tough. Like you'll persevere. They weren't being mean. They just had no idea. They had no idea what was going on in the rest of my life, and they had no idea what was going on inside of my head.
Mm-hmm.
So they were giving me the most loving advice they could when they said, please do not give up a full-time job. Right? I had one manager as I was moving a transition. I was leaving his group and moving to another group, and he said, I hope that the new group won't let you work part-time because you deserve to be paid full-time. And I said, well, I appreciate that, but I would get 20% more done if I was full-time, and I don't want to get 20% more done, so they can just keep the money.
Mm-hmm.
These were not people who were trying to break me down, who were trying to not be supportive. They actually thought they were being supportive.
Right.
Now, those same humans were some of the first to call me when the world shut down at the middle of 2020 and say, okay, my whole team is doing this now. What do I do?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? They were the first ones to call and say, I was wrong. Let's figure out how to have everybody do this.
Well, there you hit, like, I think so much of it is, I think about you in such a, as an engineer in a male dominated industry, and regardless of male, female, or whatever, that it's a very structured. Thank you. For those of you who can't see, I'm struggling for structure here, with a start and a stop, and that you perform up to a certain standard, and this is how we do, and there's not a lot of wiggle room. And so to buck the way it's always been done, right, is uncomfortable, and it's programming. Why wouldn't you, like, for, again, not that they were trying to be hurtful, but what do you mean? You just like, this is the way it's structured and this is how we roll. And of course you can do it, Wendy. I mean, like, don't give up. I remember leaving early on. I landed my first job out of college was with the Wall Street Journal. My grandfather, who worked with Chevron his entire career, gold watch literally at the end for his retirement. He was so proud of me. He was so stinking proud. Like, yes, I've made it to corporate America, right?
It's a
And
destination.
it was. And I dug in. I think back to days of being proud and could see a future for myself. It was a ladder. It was pantyhose and closed-toed shoes. It was right. It was everything that I decided corporate America was, until I was miserable. And I'm like, oh my, they're like, I can't stand this. Right. And I remember telling my grandfather that I was leaving, that I was going to take a different job.
That's a terrifying conversation.
He was the last one I told. I was and he was visibly bummed.
Yeah.
Why would you do that? Why would you leave because I'm not happy, Grandpa. I'm a shell. I don't like what I'm doing. On and on and on. And well, but you have security, you have a 401k, you have uh, you have advancement opportunities. You're a woman, like all of these things. I'm like, I could give a shit. I'll leave it all right now and go do what I want to frickin' do. So much of it, just that programming that we're shaking now, and that COVID, thank you, COVID, if there's a silver lining, that it's waking us up,
Yeah.
and mental health being the that all of these things were symptoms of a mental healthiness that I think has now advanced considerably and continue, like I said in my opening, needs so much more attention. But this concept around what it means to have a flexible schedule
It
and to
wasn't a
advocate.
conversation that we were
No,
allowed to have.
yeah,
It wasn't a conversation. And, one of the things so Making Flex Work published in 2022. And it was not the book I intended to write, but I had some friends tell me like that. They were like, no, 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 this is the one. It comes first. Like the one you're going to write later. That one still hasn't been written. But they were like, what we need now is we need to bottle up what Wendy's been doing so that we can lead our teams and our families through this. And, I wrote it from the position of this kind of big sister guide, right? This is my story. This is how we're going to get through it. And I thought I was writing to, an early 30-year-old mother in corporate America. For those of your readers or your listeners that have never written, they always tell the writer, like, find one human and write the book to the one human. So
yep,
I was
yep.
writing to my 30-year-old self as if I was older and reflecting back. And in the first 60 days after launch, the number of men who sent me pictures holding my book and saying, thank you for writing this. I now have the words to use to describe what I've always wanted and didn't know I had the permission to ask for.
Really?
Because flexible work arrangements were reserved as an accommodation to retain moms. Right? That's what non-traditional work was in corporate America. It was a DEI initiative to be able to not lose women in their 30s. And the men who many times had the same challenges, they wanted to be there with their children. They wanted to be able to do all parts of their life, but they weren't even allowed to talk about balance. Right? You talked about those in the women's groups. The men just had to like get in line, shut up, and do their jobs.
Mm-hmm.
And so, as much as flexible work is allowing women to thrive, it's allowing the other half of the population to be a part of the conversation in a way
Mm-hmm.
that pre-pandemic, they just didn't even have the luxury to have the conversation. Because if a man walked in and said, I'm leaving because of my children, you can better believe nobody thought that was a reasonable excuse.
Mm,
Right? They put up with it with the women because you know what? That's what happens. They're moms. They have to go to the doctor's appointments.
I like this. What a revelation for you to be getting the contact points and the men saying thank you. And I was just having this conversation with my soul sister who is heads up a trust company and is another woman in a man's world. And they've put together a women's advancement group, and with no thought of why are we, it was check a box to your
Right.
point.
We need an initiative so that we can show that we're doing something.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know if the doing is going to be useful or not, but we need to be doing. So let's go do.
But then also to your point that there, just because you are like, there's the addressing the female initiative without thinking it all the way through, that there are humans that need the initiative. That right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Just
love that.
because you're not in a protected class doesn't mean you don't also need support.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm, I love
And
that.
that's one of the things COVID did, right? It brought the need for the flexibility out of the shadows. It was no longer an accommodation because everybody was forced to integrate their work in their life in a way that so many people, gender
Five.
notwithstanding,
Yep.
so many
Yep.
people had their life set up so they could literally separate work from life.
Yep.
And a small group were unable to make that separation. I being one of those, right? I couldn't separate the two. But when we all had to work from home, wow, life happens lots of places in work when work happens in your house.
Mm-hmm.
You can't just lock yourself in the basement and imagine that you don't have a family upstairs. You can't just shut the door and assume that nobody's going to bang on it or open it.
Yep.
Right? I know of people who were literally in the start of the pandemic in the first 6 months hiding in their closet trying to do work so their children would not find them. Well, that's not sustainable. That's not sustainable, which means one of two things has to happen. One, we have to be okay that you have children and you're also an employee. Shocking.
Right.
Or we have to make sure you don't have children in order to be an employee.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, that's not sustainable either. So as in a group, we have to figure out how to let people be all the places they need to be and do all the things they need to do.
Mm-hmm.
So now we have to address that whole people come to work.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We employ entire humans, not just the work portion of them.
I love that. Tell me about your humanness, and I want to know what happened, what was the shift that happened prior with your son was an infant, and you went in and asked for a change in schedule. You asked to be part-time. Tell me about describe the mental part of all of this that you went through in trying to accomplish this shift in your life. I'm just curious about.
Yeah, so I would love to say that I woke up one morning, figured out that it would just solve my problems if I dropped to part-time, and then I went in, asked for it, and I got it. Wow, wouldn't that be a great story? But that is not the case. I struggled from while I was on maternity leave until my son was a year.
Mm-hmm.
About six, I knew right away that it wasn't working, but I was gonna get it done because everybody around me could get it done.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt this obligation to be as good of a mother and employee as everybody else I saw around me. Nobody that I knew was part-time and successful in an engineering career. And I didn't want to not be successful. So I was just going to power through. And I was grumpy with everybody in my life. I was just miserable with myself and with everybody around me because I couldn't be good enough for what I needed.
Mm-hmm.
And I was failing. And I don't know about you, but I hate to be a failure. And so when I'm failing and when I'm losing, I'm not chipper. Right? It's not a happy place to be on the losing end of the scoreboard.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started asking, and I had a team leader who is amazing. And he and I had worked together for years. He knew that when I came and asked for part time, that I had tried everything else. And so he said, yeah, let's do that. And then, no joke, we just stared at each other. And if you could have heard literal crickets, you could have heard literal crickets, because neither of us had any clue how to make that happen. We just knew that both of us were on the same page that it should be done.
Mm-hmm.
So he said, yes, go figure it out. I said, okay. At the entire company that I worked for, I worked at a Fortune 100 company. So we had over 60,000 employees. We had several thousand in the location where I worked. I could find 2 humans on a part-time schedule. Now they had the policies. They were a Fortune 100 company. They had all the flexible work policies. I could find 2 humans and only one of them was technical. Luckily I knew her, and I went and I sat down, and she said, here's what you do. And for me, it was a form, because like any big corporate America, all you need is a form, and that solves all your problems. Right? That's the magical form. And then it will
route this.
Yeah, exactly. So I had the form, filled out the form, and I got to the bottom, and the form said I needed the signature of the vice president of my division. And I needed the signature from the head of HR. Okay, those people were pretty far above me from where I was organizationally at that point in my career. So I set up a meeting and with the vice president, and he's like, this job can't be done part-time. I said, okay, give me another job. And he said, well, that's not really how it works here. You don't just get another job. So we'll keep talking. We talked for 11 months, Natalie, 11 months of talking before I could get somebody to agree to a trial. And it was a dark day. I do not recommend any of your listeners use my approach. I was at the end of my rope, right? I had already known for months that this wasn't working before I started this process, and now we are pushing 11 months down the path. So I'm a year invested in misery at this point. And I did something a little kamikaze. I did some skunk works. I did a little reconnaissance, and I found out that my vice president's wife had quit her job when they had their child. So I went into his office and I said, I need help.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, with what? And I said, well, I've every time you and I talk, like I'm not there. I've tried all these different things. I said, so I was wondering if you could give me your wife's phone number, and then I could call her and she could tell me how she's able to manage the children and a career. Yeah. Yeah. And he looked at me and he shook his head and he said, you already know she quit her job, didn't you? Don't you? I said, I do know that. Yeah. And I said, so you and I, we have 2 options on the table here, which is I need to quit my job or we need to figure this out.
Mm-hmm.
And I then said, you know my husband, you know where he works, you know what money he makes. Do I need to quit my job? Because I want to work, and I want to work for you in this organization.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, well, why don't we give it a try? Now, he thought give it a try meant you're going to fill out the form and he was just kicking the can.
Mm-hmm.
I heard give it a try, and I decided to ask for forgiveness. I walked right back down to my office and started right that day trying. I told the team I was working with, I told everybody around me, I am trying out part-time for 90 days.
Nice.
And I said, we've talked about it. We're going to give it a trial. I said, I need this to work for me. You guys know how miserable I am. You're the people working with me. You know what's happening. And I said, so over the next 90 days, if I am not where you need me to be, I am not available, I am not meeting your expectations, you tell me and I will fix it. Because at the end of this 90 days, I need it to be successful.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't mention it again to anybody in leadership. Off I went. At the end of the 90 days, I sent an email to everybody I worked with and I said, my 90-day trial has come to an end and I would love your feedback. You can send it to me directly or you can cut me out of this and send it to the vice president.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody cut me out. Everybody gave me the feedback. At this point, they were invested. They were a part of this trial
Mm-hmm.
and they wanted me to be happy. And I consolidated it all. Everybody said, yep, this works for us. If it works for her, it works for us. And I scheduled a meeting with the head of HR, the vice president, and my manager, and I attached all the feedback to the meeting notice. And he declined my meeting.
What?
Declined my meeting instantly. And I was hot. And we worked in a building with one of those super long main hallways. And I sat sort of at one end and he sat at the other. And I slammed up out of my desk and out the door I went, headed down that long hall. And he popped out of his office and saw me. And I was not walking slow. We all know that mad walk. I had the mad walk. And he was doing air traffic control to keep me from shouting down the hall. He was flailing at me like, don't talk, I'm coming, don't talk. And we got closer and he said, before you say anything, we were still probably like, 20 feet apart. He's like, before you say anything. And I'm still mad. Steam is coming out of my ears. I'm like a cartoon character. I'm so angry. And he said, I declined your meeting. And I said, yeah, you did. And he said, because I don't need a meeting. I had no idea you had started your part-time schedule. And if I had no idea, then there's no reason we shouldn't do it. Where's the form?
Not good.
I never looked back.
Yeah.
Never looked back. I spent time in that rest of that R&D job in part-time. I got promoted into manufacturing supply chain leadership in part-time. When I pivoted and decided to go take a job at Georgia Tech, I asked Georgia Tech, how little of me can you take?
Mm-hmm.
Because I have confidence.
You got juice of confidence and validation that it can be done. And what's coming to me is how remarkably courageous all of that took. How much courage, that didn't make any sense. How much courage that actually took for you to advocate for yourself and to say, no, I'm not backing down. In fact, here is a staple or spiral bound proof that this frickin' works. So I'm taking on the gal, the guy, whoever is listening that says, that's great, Wendy. I don't, that's just not, tell me, like, where do I find this courage? Where do I, like, give me the 5-minute pep talk of, I can have this too. Like,
well, okay, so here's your pep talk, Natalie. Your pep talk is, we are in a post-COVID world. We have technology. I did this years ago when I started my flexible work arrangement. When I brought my computer home at night, I had to plug it into the wall to get internet. Right? That is not the world of today. For me, saying I wanted to be able to split my schedule, do part-time, do anything other than sit at my desk and be hardwired into the wall, the technology just simply did not exist.
Yeah.
Today, you can work from anywhere. I can run a Teams meeting off of my cell phone sitting in a parking lot. I don't even need the computer. Right? So when you think about the barriers to entry, there are so many fewer now. We have the technology to be able to do it. So what you're asking is not really even as big of an ask as what I was asking.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the first part of your pep talk.
Mm-hmm.
You're actually not asking for something that big at all.
Mm-hmm.
The second is that if you have been working in a place long enough to build up your brand so that you are important to that company, and that's an important piece. You have to have leverage. All of this is a negotiation. And if you are a shitty employee, you have no leverage.
Mm-hmm.
So step one, you have to be a good employee that people want around. Right? Like, that's table stakes.
Right.
But if you are and you are valuable to the organization and you are willing to build a business case, there are very few reasons to say no. So on my website, I have tools at makingflexwork.com. I have tools that are free that you can download, including a flexible work arrangement form. If your company needs a form and they don't have one, I got one for you.
Route this.
Yeah, here it is. It's a form. Go. I have all the pieces you need in order to understand your time. And that is the pep talk. The pep talk is not only think about what it is that you need, but come at it to understand what the company needs and explain to them how you're still going to get it done. And if you can explain to them how they're still getting it done, then there's actually no ask at all. It's not an accommodation if I'm going to do everything you need me to do. Right? So I'm going to ask your listener to go through my 4-step plan. It's EVANL, evaluate your time. E, every hour counts. Write down what you're already doing today. Because if you can prove to them that what you're doing is a flexible arrangement, then it's not scary at all. You're just like getting approval for what you're already doing, if it's working for you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Because if you are in a hybrid or a virtual work environment, they don't know what you're doing. And that's a really scary part for a leader. To not have the control to know what's happening is terrifying. So figuring out how you're going to provide that control and oversight so that they don't have to be scared, right? Then you're going to look at what is the work. You're going to figure out, are you doing it optimized? And if not, you're going to optimize your work. You're going to look at what work are you doing and is it actually bringing you or the company value? And if it's not, you're going to stop doing it. And then you're going to start making small changes. I'm from the South. You're from Colorado, but I'm from Georgia. And in Georgia, we have a saying from my Southern grandmother, which is, how do you boil a frog? And the answer is very slowly. Right? So I know, gross, right? But this idea is that because a frog is cold-blooded, if you put it in room temperature water, you can actually boil it alive. It'll never jump out if you raise the temperature slow enough. So I want your audience to know that you got to this unbalanced place over a period of time. You cannot get back to balance instantly. It is going to take time. Because if you just turn it off like a switch and you quiet quit, which is like my least favorite word in the whole English language post-COVID, your performance will be in jeopardy. And so will your job.
Yep.
Right? This is about understanding that business has to get done and how are we going to do it? But if you have gone through these steps and you go to your boss and say, look at all the things I've already done to invest in being the best employee I can be. Why would they say no? Have the courage. You have the data. You have the power. Maybe that's the engineer in me, but you have the documentation to show that you can make this work. So why would they say no? And why would you be scared? How's that for a pep talk?
I love it. Sign me up. Sign me up. No, the universe gives me what I need. And I know that I guarantee that. Well, as I said before I hit record, that if just one person hears that pep talk, and if that one person just happens to be me, then our job here is done. So no, I totally appreciate that. I love the awareness, I think, that comes with that has been a post-COVID kind of ascent for a lot of folks, is this awareness around value and that I am valuable and that I need to advocate for myself. It's just a matter of putting pen to paper, taking inventory and making a case. And that if there's ever been a time to speak up on your own behalf, it's now.
It's absolutely now. It is absolutely now. And to build on that, if you are willing to invest the time to outline what you need and how you're going to get what the company needs, you are leaps and bounds ahead of your peers. because not everybody's willing to put in the work. I mean, I think the thing we forget sometimes is that the business needs didn't change as a result of the pandemic. Business still needs business to get done.
Mm-hmm.
This is about you figuring out how to have a conversation with the business about meeting their needs on your terms.
Mm-hmm.
Because the business doesn't care if you want to be at the bus stop at 2:30.
Right.
So don't talk about the bus stop. Just give them a plan that doesn't involve you working at 2:30.
Right.
You don't need to explain why you aren't going to work at 2:30. Just give them a plan where 2:30 is unnecessary.
Which I think that's key. Absolutely, which I know you know, but let me just tell you that yes, I agree. Because there is this there as business still needs to get done. We're in business to do business. And so this, as a business owner of whatever size, that 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 there still needs to business still needs to transact. And I appreciate, like, at some point the emotion of life is stripped away. And I still, like, in order for me to proceed forward as a business, I need business to get done. And yes, that's great that you want to have work-life balance, and it's great that you want to feel good about what you do. I need work to be done. And so, to your point, then get work done and make your life full while the work is getting done. Now I've lost my gusto with this, but the where I was going with it is that as a human being attempting to make your business work, the more I'm committed to making my business work alongside your business, the better I am at making all of this business work.
That's
And
right. Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, really, when you boil it down, if you can help the business or your leader understand what is the right work for you to be doing at the right place at the right time,
Mm-hmm.
then work gets done, because not all work actually happens between 8 and 5.
Oh, hell no.
And not all work should. I have a dear friend who works a split schedule. She lives in the Southeast in Atlanta. She has most of her peers work in Europe, and most of her team works in Asia. So she's the leader, right? Her peers, other leader peers, mostly in Europe. The team that reports to her, mostly Asia. So she works from, say, 6 in the morning until 10 in the morning. That is the second half of the European workday.
Mm-hmm.
She is an excellent one. She's always available for lunch when I want to go see her. She does all of her stuff in the middle of the day. She hangs out with her family when they get home from work in the evening. And then she gets back on the computer, say 8 o'clock at night, works until midnight, or 6 and works until midnight, because
Mm-hmm.
now she's working the first half of the day with her Asian team.
Mm-hmm.
Her European team sees her as constantly available because no matter what, she's available every day.
Mm-hmm.
Her Asian team sees her as super available because no matter what, they got her any day they want her.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody in either region cares that they're only getting her in half the day.
Yep.
Now, if she was to say, I'm sorry, I only work 8 to 5 Eastern time, no one would be happy with her.
Right.
Her peers would say she's never available. Her team would say she's never available because she actually wouldn't even be working an overlapping hour with them. But she'd be working a traditional schedule that works for no one.
Yeah.
So you know what sort of work you are doing, and you know who you work with, and you know if that's focused work or collaborative work. You know if that is work with people in your geography or elsewhere. You know these things. So build it as what works for best for Wendy is what's best for Natalie.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because then Natalie will say yes, because it will be better for Natalie than the other options.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, it's so
how
powerful when you start thinking of your time as data. And I
yeah.
think that's where my engineering brain kicks in.
Yeah.
Time is just data. So what are
Yeah.
you doing during what hour of the day, and what makes the most sense for you and your business?
Yeah. I love it. How do people work with you?
Yeah, so they can connect with me on LinkedIn. I love to work with leaders and organizations who want to think about their work differently. So if you are a leader and your team is asking for help and you don't know what to do, reach out to me. If you run an organization and you have a burnout problem or you have a retention problem, or even if you have a hiring problem, let me know and we will work together to figure out what is your work and what needs to be done where. Because some work does need to be done in the office and some doesn't. And I am really good at putting those puzzles together on which work is remote work and which is in person. And does the person need to be in the office once a week or once a month or never? So I work with organizations and leaders who do that. They can connect with me on LinkedIn or through my website, engineeringleadershipsolutions.com. They can also go to makingflexwork.com and get all the resources. If you're an individual and you just want to bounce some ideas off, I am happy to do that. I do tons of free mentoring and coaching. I actually decided about a year into my business not to monetize the flexible work coaching for individuals because I feel like it is something that everybody deserves access to. So if somebody just wants to learn more about it and talk about what they can do with their career and their schedule and brainstorm with me, send me a note. We will get on a Zoom and figure it out. So makingflexwork.com and then reimagineyourwork.com. We didn't talk at all really about that book. That's around running your own business of the brand that you sell as you. It's really around how do you think of yourself as a small business so that you are always the best employee that you can be. It's what gives you that leverage to get the flexible work. But all of those websites literally point you to the same place, Natalie, because I am a one-woman show over here and I don't have the sophistication to run 3 websites. So you can go to any of those places.com and they're going to take you all to me.
There's a part 2. I want to have you back and let's talk about reimagine. Let's talk about the taking a brand, your own personal brand to and doing your business your way and all of that.
That sounds great. I've had a blast talking with you. I can't wait to do it again.
Good. Yeah. This has been enlightening and as I say in my opening, empowering. I really appreciate your perspective. I imagine you as, this. I always have this thing about going back. I'm imagining a young Wendy and like just this. There's no not like. Which we need, everyone needs a Wendy in their life. I need a Wendy in my life that this is how you look at it. And it's not to say that you're not I gather you as an emotion-full human being and that there is fire in your belly.
Oh, for sure.
How you process is a very welcome and empowering way of looking at things where you can package it. You can add your emotion back into it, but you got to get your package right. And that's what I'm appreciating most about you. Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Yeah. And you're right. I do. In my household, we say that we have big emotions, right? We have big emotions in our house. But my engineering brain, I think, is what is in there. It allows me to strip that emotion out, look at it in a very practical way, and then put the emotion back in.
Yeah, I love it. The emotion is the big bow on top. It's the thrill, right? Right.
It's what makes it worth it. The human aspect of all of this is what makes it worth it. There are very few businesses that would survive without the human aspect, because at the end of the day, even if they are not human-centered, some humans making the decision to make that purchase. And so if we can't focus the business on being what we need to be for the humans that are making that business work, it all falls apart.
Yeah. Yeah. You are a beautiful human. Thank you.
Oh, thanks. You too.
And thank you, folks, for thinking out loud with me and today's guest, Wendy Cocke. Given how many choices you have to spend your time, I am honored that you've been listening in. Until we visit again, go live with love and go live with intention. And please, please, please don't let anyone fuck with your flow. Big hugs, big love. Bye-bye, friends.